Good evening and welcome back to Lux Talks. Last week, I was reading a very interesting findings of a survey which was conducted by Harvard University, and it had more than 2,500 respondents. According to the findings of that survey, as human beings, we spend more than 30% of our time daydreaming. Yes, you heard it right. Daydreaming. All of us are daydreaming unless we are reading a story, listening to a story, or watching a story unfold on the screen. So why am I telling you all this? That is because our talk show, Lux Talks, is all about meaningful conversations and stories. The stories are narrated by our accomplished speakers who have impeccable track record in the luxury industry. They are stars in their own right. Each one of them is a performer. And what about you, my dear patrons? You are the proverbial light that makes these stars, these diamonds shine the brightest. So without further ado, we will now begin with the titles. Titles, please. Awesome, isn't it? I think you liked it. So all my panelists today are very well-known personalities. They don't really need an introduction. But as a conversation starter, I will just acknowledge their presence and welcome them. So I'll start with Devashish. Dev Ashish. It means God's blessing. Do I need to say more? We have Devashish with us. So that means all of us are blessed. So welcome Devashish Kamdar. We look forward to
Thank you, Anilji.
Yes. So now
thank you, Anilji, for the kind words.
Come again, please.
Thank you for the kind words.
My pleasure, sir. Now our second panelist is Gaurav Gupta. And Gaurav means pride. It's the pride of nation. And it's an honor for all of us to have you, Gaurav. Welcome. So we will
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. My pleasure as well. Parnia. The word Parnia in Persian means pure. I am really impressed with the purity of thoughts. However, we have not met so far. The kind of work which you have done and your proposition, the latest proposition, Gur Organics, it's all about purity and making the planet a place to live in for all of us peacefully without polluting it. So welcome very much.
Thank you.
And it's my pleasure to. And Toranj is again a Persian word. It means center, to be at the center of anything, something. While she is at the center of so much of activity which goes around at Forever Mark, she is a woman of few words. How to be silently effective, she is the best example. But today, Toranj, you do not have an excuse. You will have to speak, and we are looking forward to hear you. So now, before I start talking to each one of you, let me make an opening statement. How the world has changed in the last 10 years. The functions of design and technology are integrating in almost all the luxury companies today. The process started with Apple, Sir Johnny Ive. I'm sure all of you would have heard about him. He's a legendary designer. When he joined, he was an industrial engineer and he played a very important role in the launch of iPhone. And Apple, which was a technology company, became transformed into a consumer global luxury brand. While this is true of Apple, we can't forget other companies. Tiffany and Company, which is a jewelry company, hired Reed Krakoff. Reed was a very successful accessories designer, and he had turned around Coach, which is an American luxury brand. Since design and art are closely related, they called him Chief Artistic Officer. Back home in India, Titan, the market leader, elevated Revati Khan as the Chief Design Officer in 2017. Now, while we have talked about Chief Design Officers, look at Ralph Lauren, which is all about design, a global luxury brand. They appointed Alice Delahunt in 2018 as the Chief Digital Officer. So design and digital, the marriage has already happened. Today you will find that Chief Design Officers and Chief Digital Officers are rubbing shoulders with the top management teams, such as the Chief Executive Officers, CEOs, CAOs, and CFOs. And this integration is going to go stronger and faster post-COVID. So while I have said this, I will invite comments from the speakers. But before I do that, I would like you to see a film. Jayan bhai, can you show that Nunuri film? Hello, Jayan bhai, are you there? The computer generated character is known as Nunuri, and it was created in 2017. This video is the best example of design meets technology. Buccellati, which is an Italian luxury brand, is all about jewelry designs. They have used digital technology to the best effect. And there is one more reason why I showed that video to you, because our panelist Gaurav Gupta has designed clothes for the virtual influencer Nunuri. All designers dress up celebrities. There is nothing new about it. But Gaurav, beginning with you, how was the experience of dressing up Nunuri? Can we hear your
So,
point of view?
hi everyone. I think it was really cool. Actually, it happened through a stylist, and it was I think it was for Cosmopolitan cover story, and I think Nandini had called me, the editor of Cosmopolitan, very kindly, and she was very excited about doing a first digital influencer, not a digital AI influencer, I guess, or a CG influencer, as you just said, computer generated, on the cover of Cosmo, and it was sourced, and I think we wanted to put a very kind of couture look out there, and I was a little iffy when it started, because it's almost like you're dressing an unreal person, but then anyways, I think everything in life is quite surreal, right? So in the sense, I don't know what is real and surreal anymore, and I think technology is taking us a bit into that as well, as long as we are careful of situations like Black Mirror.
Oh, great. So basically, you seem to be very comfortable with technology, because not many designers. So creativity and technology.
I think everyone is now, Anil. The thing is that there are people who are comfortable with technology, and everybody's kind of coping up very well with it. And I think even the bigger brands or whatever, or older designers or brands and things like that, they might not be comfortable personally themselves, but I think it's like it's like my parents are comfortable with technology today. So I think technology is seeped into everybody now. And also like, also I know I'm noticing all designers or all brands or all kind of creative people are, if they are not comfortable themselves, then they're hiring people who are good at it. So I think there's that structure coming in everywhere, which is which is not just I won't say positive, which is a need of the hour change, I think.
I tend to agree, and you are one of the early adopters because I think this was the first time that FDCI did a digital show, and
Yeah.
your film really rocked. So
Thank you.
before we talk about the film per se, I would ask Devashish. Devashish, please tell me where did you two guys meet and what did you see in each other to collaborate? I'm talking about Gaurav and you.
Me and Gaurav, I remember it was the Vogue Atelier in Ahmedabad, where we happened to meet the first time. We were there at the show. The jewelry was shown to him, and he was impressed with the jewelry. He's like, because the kind of clothes he makes, they are so different than the current Indian industry has ever seen. So the next day we had a chat. We met for coffee, and yeah, then it happened. We got connected. We gel well, and we've created something. Now his design sense is so different that the collection which we've created could be a torchbearer for the jewelry industry in India. It's like witnessing a new era altogether.
That's so sweet. Actually, he's right. When we met there, it was Vogue Atelier, and Vogue had put my clothes. We were showcasing our clothes in Ahmedabad, and that was the first time I think I'd gone to Ahmedabad in my life. And we did a show there, and it was interesting that I saw a luxury market in Ahmedabad as well, which I was introduced to with that during that Vogue Atelier show. And we had collaborated with Occasions Fine Jewelry then, and it was paired with our garments. But it was the first time I actually saw someone's jewelry quality and design sensibility to some level going with my clothes. I think I was really impressed with their craftsmanship and their quality, and that is what I was looking for in my jewelry brand all this while. And then we met, and the rest, and then we just clicked, and it just happened from there.
So Gaurav, you are an artist, you are a designer, you are a couturier, but most importantly, you are a storyteller. So you have told a beautiful story using that opportunity of FDCI's opening show, and you made a film out of it. All I can say is I have been very skeptical when jewelers chase these fashion designers for a collaboration. Because when you do a physical show in a five-star hotel or any venue, offline venue, what happens is the jewelry gets a raw deal because men don't look at the jewelry and you can't see the finer aspects of jewelry. For example, it could be a beautiful ring. Who looks at the ring? People are there for a drama, but when you are making a digital show, the jewelry sounds looks so perfect. You can see the details, and I think that is something which I like about your show. The clothes as well as the jewelry both get equal mileage and equal visibility. So I think this trend is going to go from strength to strength. That is what I feel. But tell us something about how you have been using poetry and drama in your shows. Because I think you are one of the first designers. I remember in Mumbai, your show with Lakme had this poetry element. So could you tell us more about it from how you design these shows and the storytelling angle?
So I think I'm just very random, actually. I just I just start with a very random thought, and I just, it's almost like I work on instinct, I think, and it's never so carefully thought out, etc., etc. I think when you follow your instinct and then you start jotting it down, and then naturally magic happens, is when magic really happens. So basically, I live with my best friend since 20 years. She's a poet, And I think it's hers and my sensibility, and she's my muse as well. It's hers and my sensibility which resonates towards philosophy of life, and which is, I think, my philosophy towards design as well as literature or art, or an outlook towards life in general, or life death concept in general. So I think that that's what I resonate with, and I think that her poetry inspires me and it moves me, and I think it also becomes very hard for me a lot of times to express the inspirational thought process or even concept notes for collections, which I find very excruciatingly boring of how a lot of people do it in the world. And I think that poetry is like is talking philosophy. And what I tend to do with my clothes, I talk philosophy, and I think that's where it's a great marriage with my brand. And yeah, it was not just that show. I think we've been doing poetry for our collection notes since the very first show of mine. But yes, that show in Lakme, which was the opening show of Lakme Fashion Week in 2019 Jan, Nafkira did go up on this harness and made a 25 feet skirt, and it was very dramatic. And I think it was that show was, for example, that show, as you said, like, how do I think of these concepts? It came about because it was an exciting venue, that it's Mumbai Opera House. I want to tell a different story, and that story is, the story is not very defined. I think it's more magical when when it's more abstract.
So you are referring to Navkirat when you say poet, right?
Yes.
Oh, great. I think Bibu also recently collaborated with her, and that film also is outstanding. So we had Bibu in the last session. So I remembered, that both.
Yeah. Bibu also had her collaborated with her for New York Fashion Week, and so did I for India Couture Week. And it is her poetry is magical.
Yes, great. Thank you. So coming to Parnia, you have been an early adopter and India's most successful fashion entrepreneur in the physical as well as in the online space. So basically, I have received many requests from the audience members. They would like to hear your journey with respect to the mistakes, if you have made any mistakes in life, and how did you learn from it and emerge stronger. So if you can take us through the journey.
Thank you for that compliment. I think it's hardly true, but thank you. Mistakes. I've made so many mistakes. I think I started as an entrepreneur very young. I think that was the first maybe mistake, if you can call it that. It's the more experience you have working for other people before you become an entrepreneur, I think you're better equipped for the challenges. And I think I became an entrepreneur at the age of like 24, 25, which is very young. And I did face a lot of challenges because of my lack of experience. Now, having said that, before I became an entrepreneur for 2-3 years, I did extensive amount of work in fashion in New York with internships, and then in India at Harper's Bazaar launching it, and then being in the launch team, and then with the movie Aisha being a costume designer. And I learned a lot, but I still think that I was very young to start my own business. And had I waited maybe a few more years, I would have probably had less challenges because of my experience. But having said that, do I think that mistake is really bad, or, I don't regret it, because it was the right time to start an online luxury store, because India was just getting introduced to online shopping with Flipkart and Myntra just starting out. It was the right time for me to launch, because a lot of marketing money was being spent by these huge companies to educate the Indian customer about online shopping. And that time there was no luxury online shopping in terms of fashion. And I think a big reason why it worked was because I came at the right time. And I think, yes, my mistake was maybe my lack of experience and I was too young, but the good thing was that I was at the right place at the right time. So many times you make a mistake. There can be two ways to see a mistake. You can see it as something which, okay, it may not be ideal in one way, but in another way it might work. So I think mistakes are not always bad. and I don't think they're always negative towards your journey. As long as you learn from them and you move fast, I think one of the good qualities that I have is that I do pick myself up and be like, okay, this went wrong. Now, how do I fix it? And what do I have to do? And then I move on quite quickly. I don't spend a lot of time whining and crying about a mistake. I spend a short amount of time and then I quickly move on. Yeah, so especially with pop-up
I can't
shops,
imagine you crying over a mistake for sure.
No, I cry a lot. I cry a lot actually, but
I cry a lot as well.
The good thing is
but
cry.
not over mistakes.
You don't know.
It's more like
I cry over everything. But the thing is that I cry and I let it out, and literally precisely 5 minutes, I'm done.
Oh my God, I can't believe you schedule your crying time as well.
No, I vent everything out. I find somebody, like my mother, my father, somebody who I can vent, and I say, I've done this, I'm so stupid, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm done. And then 10 minutes later, I'm like, now what do I do? How do I fix it? How do I move on? How do I learn from it? So I think my turnaround time is really good. So that
I think the doership in you is very, very inspiring, Panya.
I don't
Gaurav and Panya, all I can say is to cry is human. And crying is the best catharsis one can have.
I don't like dwelling. I think the biggest waste of time is sitting and dwelling on mistakes. And I think it's okay to let it out and be upset, but you have to move on, especially if you're an entrepreneur, because you are paying salaries, you have like overheads, you have fixed costs. You cannot afford to sit there and dwell on something forever, And I think even though I was quite young, that value was instilled in me quite strongly by my parents, that they never let me dwell on anything bad for long. They always told me to move on and do something about it. So I think that attitude helps when you're talking about mistakes, and you know what, the best way to be the best entrepreneur, I have realized, is to make a list of everything you've learned from your mistakes. Like over the years, like for example, when we started Pop-Up Shop, a lot of it was trial and error. A lot of it was like, okay, my logical brain tells me that I should do this, I should do that. And then if it doesn't work, I have to quickly adapt and do something else, because I didn't have anybody else to look up to. Nobody else was doing this kind of luxury e-commerce business. So I didn't have anything to copy or even look up to as such in India, So I kind of had to learn on the job. So I was making mistakes and adapting like constantly, and I think that's the only way to go when you're starting something new in a new category, in a new field,
Very interesting perspective. Now I will move on to Torrens, because Forever Mark, is a very proactive company, and they have really done wonderful things, not just for the trade, for the consumers as well. India remains a traditional jewelry market, but they have used design as a differentiator to make things happen in the country. And I have been closely involved with Forever Mark in many ways. But I would rather ask Torrens to talk about design as a differentiator in the jewelry space. Please, Torrens.
Yeah, so being a global brand, for us, when we have to design and we have to think about it in scale. So normally the way we go about it is we identify certain consumer cohorts. So by that I mean that we do a lot of consumer research. We go really well into the consumer's life, their behavior, understand what they're really feeling. And based on that, we build trends on the consumer, what trends are going on in the world, what is globally becoming relevant, how is their lifestyle evolving. And on taking those insights in, it is when we start finally designing and bringing out collections which people will find relevant, not only in their rational mind, but emotionally something will speak to you about that design. And that's how we actually bring out differentiation. Now, we also have a very clear method of how our jewelers, our partner jewelers, can also do it. So in that sense, what we do is we look at trends every year, and not only trends in jewelry, but trends across design. So in trends in architecture, trends in graphics. And based on that, we also come up with a annual trend book, which helps jewelers and manufacturers understand that these are the trends that are going forward in jewelry, in design, and there's something maybe I can pick up from here to make a different kind of design which will be relevant to my jeweler, the jeweler I'm manufacturing for, or the consumer I am catering to. And that's actually how we build our whole design library.
So I also noticed that you have used technology to the best effect, not just in designing of products, but designing of consumer experiences, your visual merchandising, the kiosks that you make, or even the retail outlet. It has got technology being used at different touch points. Not only in India, I think you have cross-pollinated from the Chinese market also. So can you tell us a little bit more about the technologies aspect and how you have been able to adapt to Indian conditions?
See, the thing is, when all of us think of technology, we think in a very, it has to be hi-fi, super tech, everything. But technology basically has to be an enabler to enhance your business, enhance your consumers, enhance the experience that happens. So when we look at retail and when we look at jewelers per se, when you're looking at a retail store, you should not be looking at it as, oh, other jewelers are doing this kind of business, so I will make my store better than these jewelers. When you're looking at a jewelry store, you are actually competing with all of organized retail, and your experience has to be above that. So technology plays a very key role here. What used to be wow experiences before in normal jewelry stores have now become hygiene. And if you think that you are getting to that level now, you are actually going backward, because consumers don't only come to your store, or don't only go to jewelers, they go to all retail stores, and they expect the same behavior, same kind of experience at that level. So in our stores, in our Forever Mark boutiques, and also in China and the US, there is a number of things that we have put in to help enhance the experience. So in our store in Delhi, what we have done is and this is something very simple and easily implementable. But when a consumer comes in and asks for a price of a piece of jewelry, the salesperson will come, take out the calculator, do some calculation, say gold price is this much, diamond price is this much, making is this much, so this is the cost. In that whole bit, it takes up so much time, and people in metros don't have that time. They are so time poor. So simple thing that we've done is we've tagged all our jewelry with readers, so that you just place the jewelry, the consumer sees the price, says, okay, I like this, put it in my cart, sort of thing. And you bring out the jewelry pieces that they like, put it, they know the cost, they know the stock available, they know if there are sizes in their requirement. And this actually helps save time and allows us to show consumers more of our collection, rather than wasting time in the discussion of how much the price of that product is. So that's one of the things that we've done. Second is we also have hot spotting that we do. So we in our store, we can figure out, we get reports of where the consumers are actually concentrating most. So that gives us an idea whether the layout of the store is right, what we should put, which will be relevant, because this is where consumers are standing for a longer period of time. That gives us a complete idea. Third thing is also, we know which products are being seen but not being bought. So that also, then we can figure out why that is happening. So there are many things that we do in our stores to help build the consumer experience, help us and understand and evolve our inventory, which is a huge cost for us, and help build a whole system to enhance business.
You have been collaborating with a lot of fashion designers. So can you share your experience? How fruitful has been the experience? It appears to be fruitful because you have been doing it for almost a decade now.
Yes, of course, it's one of the best experiences we have, because we get to learn a lot from the designer's perspective also of what he or she is thinking about jewelry, we also are able to then target a very different kinds of consumer sets. So as a brand, we have a very wide positioning. We start at the lowest price of our product could be in thousands, the highest would be in crores. So and so to be able to cater to this entire set of consumers, we have to have collaborations which appeal to that set of consumers' design aesthetic. And who better to bring in people who have such a high level of creativity, such a high level of aesthetic, that they really make diamonds come alive. And they give a, and especially people who are not from the jewelry designing area, because when they come in, they bring in a completely different thought, not a typical straight jacketed thought. When they come in with a design idea, it's completely different. There is, of course, what happens is we have to engineer the thoughts that they come up with, because sometimes it doesn't work tech wise. So we sit with our studio in Milan and with our designers in Italy, and we actually, from the thought that comes in from the designer, we work with them and bring that thought alive. So there is a lot of technical work that goes behind it, but it makes a hell of a difference when you see a product which is created by a couture designer, and then you see a product which is run-of-the-mill jewelry. It's a huge difference. So definitely very fruitful, and it's something that I really enjoy doing myself, and we have tons of collaborations that we would love to do further.
So Gaurav, what Toran just said must be like music to your ears. So we would like to know your concept of sculpture couture. What is it? A lot of us would like to know, because this is something which honestly I don't know what sculpture couture means. Can you explain it to us?
Okay, what does sculpture couture mean? I think it's basically it's how you see things. Okay, when you see clothes, what is a sculpture? Sculpture is a three-dimensional object, and so are clothes. And when you combine the two thought processes together, and a sculpture is also an art piece. In a traditional way, it is actually an art piece. Installation art today is also modern sculptures, right? So what I'm trying to say is that I anyway see fashion as art, and there are many blurred lines with definitions in my mind around everything. So sculpture couture is basically when we end up sculpting a garment around the body. It's not actually following the rules of pattern making or the formulas of draping, etc. It's actually almost like breaking all the rules and making something which is three-dimensional around the body. So it's almost like it's conceptual couture, which it's almost like art couture, and I personally like calling it sculpture couture because that's something which resonates with my sensibility a lot.
So you said fashion designing is an art. So when we talk about any art form, we talk about creativity, and one of the things that a designer does is he looks out for inspirations, and inspirations come from various sources, from nature, from architecture, maybe from a person. There could be any source. There is no limitation as far as the source is concerned. And how the inspiration takes shape is, the first thing is you start sketching, and then you apply your mind how to develop into a product. So now with advance of technology, with CAD, CAM and all that jazz, you think sketching is no more relevant?
No, I love sketching. I think sketching can never be irrelevant.
No, that is as far as you are concerned. But now there are so many copycats there,
The thing is, I think we have, I think it's a very kind of, it's like, I don't know, it's like opening your eyes. We have an innate need to sketch, like our ancestors needed to sketch on the rocks. So I think and the action of doing that. I think maybe that whole thing of a paper is changing to a pad, but you still end up using your hand with a stylus and you're sketching. So there is a connect there as well. It's just the medium is changing. It's still sketching.
So while we are talking about inspirations, have you developed an entire line or collection inspired by a human being? Have you done that anytime?
Inspired by a human being? No. I think, no. I think like I get inspired by a sensibility in human beings, and I get inspired by the strategy or the thought of shifting cultures. And I think when you get stuck, I don't like getting boxed in inspirations as well. So I actually, when you're saying that, I don't even get inspired by my inspirations. Also don't have a very defined box. I'm not defined by a particular region in the world or a particular era, like how people are inspired by 20s or 70s, etc., etc. I find all of those inspirations very, constricting for me. For me, my inspirations have to be very, very fluid. And that's how the fluidity in my clothes and jewelry comes around.
Okay. So when we are talking about
Having said that, Pernia inspires me for sure.
Oh, great. So I was coming to Pernia. So Pernia, what inspires you?
Thanks, Gaurav. You're so sweet. But to be honest, I'm just speaking on a very macro level. What inspires me is the hunger and the need or the desire to keep learning and to create something beautiful and to make or develop products or a dance performance or anything that I do should be something which is beneficial for the consumer, which makes the consumer feel something, which is going to add something to people's lives. It's just this desire and this hunger. I think that hunger is my biggest inspiration, that I want to always do better. I want to stay ahead of the curve. I want to grow as an artist or an entrepreneur, and I want to be, and I don't want to be one dimensional. That's why, even as an entrepreneur or as an artist, I don't like to limit or box myself. Like something similar to what Gaurav was saying, that when you're an artist, so for example, I've been a classical dancer since I was 4 years old.
And that to a very beautiful classical dancer.
You're very sweet. But I'm not limiting myself just to that. I mean, yes, classical dance is part of my soul, but I can, that fluidity and that creativity, it runs into so many different fields, and I don't like to limit myself. And I think my inspiration is to just create and to have this drive to do better, to do something beautiful. I am a bit of an exhibitionist, so I like to present, I like to show, and that comes across when I'm on stage, or whether I'm creating a business, or whether I'm promoting my business, or whatever it is, So I think inspiration, it's very hard to kind of pinpoint it to one thing, usually, unless you're talking about one specific performance or one specific garment. But inspiration is so large, I think for artists, and it's very hard for artists, at least I can speak for myself, to box myself in and say that this one thing inspires me. A conversation could inspire me. Of course, nature inspires everyone. I love nature. I grew up in Mussoorie in Woodstock. So I went to boarding school when I was 6 years old, and I was in the Himalayas. So for me, nature is a huge inspiration. So there's so many things, and I think that's the best part about doing what I do and being alive, and is to feel so inspired and all the time, So yeah, that's what
Awesome.
I feel about inspiration.
So Pernia pop-up shop retails jewelry, but what I find is it is more of costume jewelry. So, well, jewelry is a jewelry, it is an adornment product. So what stops you from retailing fine jewelry?
So I cannot speak about Pernia's pop-up shop at the moment because I'm not the proprietor anymore. It's been sold. But I can speak about it when I had started it and when I was running it. So at that time, we actually did start with some fine jewelry. I remember we had Bharani's, who are a very old jewelry house in Delhi. we had them on board, and we had one or two other people. And I think the reason, like I said, I had to adapt as I went along. And what happened was there were very strict laws about shipping fine jewelry abroad. And from day one, we were shipping worldwide. So I didn't want to have some product available only for clients in India and some product available only for clients abroad. I wanted everything to be available to everyone. So that's why we had to stop fine jewelry, which was a little more expensive. But then we did have silver jewelry and we had gold plated jewelry. So a lot of the jewelry was not purely costume. A lot of it was semi-precious. It did have gold plating. A lot of it was silver, which we were selling later, and it was selling like domestically really well. And so it wasn't just costume. And the thing is, you have to understand that when you're buying online, the online shopping is price sensitive, even for someone like me who sold couture online. When you really get into expensive fine jewelry, it is something that people see as a large investment, and they do like to see it in person. So you can't completely take that away. So that's why semi-precious, gold-plated, all that works really well, and it sells better.
So do you intend to retail jewelry out of your new initiative, Gur?
No, not as of now. Not as of now. I am in talks with a few NGOs and a few people who are putting together women, with various backgrounds to create accessories. And it is something I might look into a little later. But even if we do jewelry for good organics, it'll have to be jewelry made from recycled, sustainable, or organic materials. So it's going to be a little complicated, and I do want to have a nice element of giving back, because there are a lot of NGOs that create beautiful accessories. So if I could train them to do it with sustainable and organic materials, and if I could give them the design, that would be great. But because it's a little tedious, the process, it might take a little longer. So I will do it, but not at the moment.
Okay. So there are questions about sustainability.
Yeah.
I'll come back to you slightly later.
Sure,
But first, let me talk to Devashish.
Yeah.
So Devashish, you have started
Yes,
your business operations in London. You have a store by the name of Rare Ever. So what I find is the kind of jewelry and the kind of retail identity you have created for Rare Ever is totally different as compared to occasions fine jewelry. So can you share your thoughts on how did you go about designing the experience as well as designing the product?
Anilji, occasions fine jewelry specifically caters to brides. So the designing, the jewelry, the elements we use in India at our Ahmedabad and Mumbai stores has to do more of Jadao jewelry, which is using more of uncut diamonds and full cut diamonds. So the traditional Indian bride, even today, they would be wanting some sort of traditional aesthetic in their design, some clarity and some bold pieces as well. So wedding is the main target of occasions fine jewelry. Coming to rare fine jewelry, the customer TG we are trying to target is totally different. Our main sort of clientele over UK would be the Russian, the Lebanese, and the Chinese people out there. So the tourist in London. If you know, it is located at Mayfair. So Mayfair tends to be where all the tourists come year round. Obviously, due to this pandemic, right now the situations are difficult, and London is shut, as Jan Bhai told us. But it will soon open. We are looking at March reopening. And the jewelry in Rare Ever is something of that sort where there is no gold seen. So it's mainly focusing on the brilliance of the diamonds used and the precious stones we are using.
So before we move on, I find that Rare Ever and Forever rhyme. So I think there is a good opportunity of both of you, your companies, Thoran's company and your company of collaborating, So I think, and both of you are dealing in diamonds. So let something come out of this interaction.
Definitely.
That we are having
Definitely.
But tell me honestly, you and Gaurav have come out with, I think, how many collections so far? And what has been the response and what is the thought process? I think that would be wonderful to for me as well as for the audience to understand and appreciate. So both of you, Gaurav as well as...
We've come out with 4 collections. Gaurav's been designing the Forest collection, the Infinity collection, and he's been using all those varied ideas, which has made it was a big task for us and the karigars to to set and cut the diamonds the way he wanted it, because we were, since day one we had decided that we stay specific to craft the jewelry from the paper to the live piece. It has to be specially cut and specially made. And Gaurav was always insisting that it has to be at a specific cut. And in order to achieve brilliance at that particular cut is definitely a task for a traditional jeweler. But somehow we've come across and we've developed the collection very well. What's your say on it, Gaurav?
So, when I, for me, I think it's very important to have, for me as a person, as a designer, as an artist, it's very, very important to have my unique point of view. And what is it that you are actually giving to the world, like what Pernia was saying as well, or what is it that you're leaving behind as a thought as well. And I think that thought is very, very important. And couture and design is first all in the thought and the feeling. So what is the feeling that you want to give? Because when you actually see a lot of jewelry brands, I feel like what was really interesting, what Taranj was saying earlier, which was like when they study emotions and they study trends of emotions and how people feel emotionally around in life or with jewelry as well. So those are the kind of things that excite me. And when I was sketching this jewelry, with the first few collections, which is the Liberation suite or the Effervescent suite or the Ivy suite, etc., which is inspired by Infinite Lines, or it's inspired by Enchanted Forest, or it's inspired by it's like a poison ivy necklace, etc. So it has all these abstract inspirations in them. It was very, very, I gave myself a free hand. I did not think traditionally at all. I did not even think of the market at all to start with. So we want to create a new sensibility of jewelry, not just in India, but as a global brand. That's how brands like Cartier or Bulgari or even, or specialized brands or Harry Winston, etc., or Graf actually are formed, because there is a unique identity to it. So today, if you see all our jewelry, it's unique world over. You would never see a jewelry piece even similar to that anywhere else. I see this kind of jewelry actually selling as art pieces for millions and billions, a few decades from now, because I think that feeling was very, very important for us. And the challenges that occasions fine jewelry has, the Devang and Devashish have done, and the way they had to create the liberation. If you actually see this jewelry pieces, they are very, very flexible to be able to. I have been really pleasantly surprised. In fact, a bit like, wow, how is this craftsmanship done? We've gone through so many CADs. There's so much technical know-how of how to make this new kind of a product in fine jewelry happen. So it's been a very, very exciting journey.
So in fact, Gaurav, I had the opportunity of visiting your Gurgaon store last year. So,
you mean to say Mehrauli store?
Mehrauli, MG Road.
Yeah.
Mehrauli, Gurgaon Road. There is a store there.
It's not the Mehrauli Gurgaon Road. It's actually it's the Mehrauli Road. It's the one which is on the road of Olive. Yeah.
Yeah, there are designer boutiques in that complex. So
yes.
I loved your jewelry. I saw that. And when I saw your recent collection that you launched at FDCI opening show, you have a signature style, because I can recognize your style, as far as diamonds are concerned. But I haven't seen your collection that has natural precious gemstones. So can you talk a little bit about how it is a different experience, designing a diamond jewelry and designing natural gemstones too? Because I'm yet to see your jewelry with pearls or let's say rubies or emeralds. I'm yet to see it. That's the reason I'm asking.
So I think again, it depends on my mood to start with. So it's literally starts from there. And the thing is, it's also with our brand. It's like when I see this, so like I like the monotonality in our clothes. Like when I don't like mixing too many colors together, because there's so much detail in my design. If you mix too much color, it becomes like a hosh posh. And there's that, when you see, I like the purity of of monotones with a lot of detail. For me, that is an experience, and that is let's say my style of doing things. Having said that, we are coming up with a new collection with, in the next few collections, we are introducing rubies and emeralds and sapphires and whatnot. So there will be precious stones. And we already have some rings with a lot of precious stones in the stores.
Okay, great. So now we move on to Parnia. Let's talk about your current pet project, Gur Organics. But before I do that, I think there is a request from Apurva Rai. She wants to ask the questions, and that question has resonance with your proposition, Gur. So I would request Jayan Bhai to unmute Apurva Rai and also start her video. Apurva, you can raise your hand, please. Yes. You can start her camera also, video, I mean. Hi, Apurva. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening. I'm very good.
So you can ask your question to Parnia. She's right before you.
Okay. First of all, good evening to all the esteemed panelists. I am Apurva Rai from JD Institute of Fashion Technology. And my question is addressed to Parnia ma'am. So the question is, can sustainability and luxury work together in reality? And if it can, what kind of monetary impact does it have on the business?
Hi, Apurva. Thank you for your question. It's actually a really intelligent question. Sustainability and luxury actually can very well go hand in hand. And I say this because I've started this new venture. And if you're getting into sustainable material and sustainable fabric, for example, everything we use is from fabric which is found in the environment. So the dress I'm wearing, this is rose fabric. And we've used aloe vera fabric. We use hemp. So we use all kinds of beautiful exotic fabric for our garments. And now this fabric is really expensive. So just by that, just by procuring the fabric we need to make our garments, that in itself is luxury. If I were to make something in organic cotton as opposed to regular cotton, it would be double the price for me, the cost. So yes, if you're going to wear beautiful organic fabric, it's going to feel amazing on your skin. It's probably going to last you a lot longer. It flows very beautifully. It looks stunning. It's very comfortable, much more than non-organic fabric, but you are paying a slightly premium price for it, so hence it is luxury. It's automatically luxury. Also, let me say that in Gur Organics, I didn't want to make an organic line for the sake of it. I wanted to do my best to make it as authentic as possible. So all our fabric is certified. So when you're buying certified fabric, there is a price for it. Also, we don't use any zippers. We don't use any plastic buttons. We don't use any elastic. Now, when you let go of all those elements, which make designing a lot easier, then you have to really sit, and your design process becomes a little more complicated, because I could really want a certain style or silhouette, but it may not work without elastic or without a zipper, and I have to then become very creative in the way I design. And my designing process has to be more creative and more time intensive, because I have to trial and error and see that how I can make this work without zippers, without elastic, which a lot of designers who are selling in the same segment as us use. So that in itself, again, is slow fashion. It's taking a very long time to develop something which would otherwise be a lot quicker, and that also in itself is luxury. So these garments, this collection, this brand is very carefully thought out. Every single process in this brand is carefully thought out. My materials are more expensive, and honestly, I didn't want to make the price point very high, because a lot of what we're doing is pret, or like just slightly like the new collection is evening wear, but it's not heavy, or it's not traditional. It's still Western. So we wanted to keep the price still competitive and not make it too expensive, which means that that my margin then becomes much less, you know, because I want to keep it at a cost which is competitive in the market, but at the same time, you're getting a lot more than you would get from any other garment you buy in the same price range, you know. So at least for Good Organic, sustainability and luxury are completely hand in hand. And that's what I think makes our brand special, you know. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
The second part was, does it have any monetary impact on the business?
Yeah, so that's what I like. I think I did answer that. Of course, it has a monetary impact on me. Because my margins are smaller because I'm trying to keep a competitive, good price for my clients. Because I want them to be able to buy it at a good price, and also I don't want to place my garment in a segment that becomes couture, because we're not. You know, we're luxury pret, and it is a little bit more of an expensive endeavor for me as the entrepreneur, because everything is a little more expensive and time intensive. But I think in the long run, it'll work better for me. And I'm creating a better brand, and I'm creating something which is good for the future of fashion. So I don't mind.
Awesome.
Thank you
Apurva,
so
you
much,
got the
ma'am.
answer?
Thank you.
Yes, sir, sure.
Great.
Thank you so much.
So I want Gaurav and Parnia to answer the next question jointly. You have an early advantage, you know, you started much before Gaurav did online. And
No,
Online.
online. Okay.
And you have collaborated while you were running the show at Parnia Pop-Up.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
one of the most, what did you learn from each other, number one? And secondly, how does one create a brand experience on a 5-inch smartphone? That is one part of the question. And because we have now less time, I am clubbing the second question as well here. Gaurav, you did a project in association with Vogue and IBM. It was about artificial intelligence in fashion. So please club these two questions because they are all about technology, and let us have your views on this.
Panya, you want to go first?
No, you go ahead.
So I think Panya's and my collaboration has been more, for me, it's not been about Panya's pop-up shop at all, actually. It's been more like resonance of minds, literally. Like I'm listening to Panya today, and I'm so impressed with the aloe vera fabric and the rose fabrics, etc. that she's doing. She's always doing something or the. As I said, I'm very impressed and inspired by her doership in life, and that's something that I resonate with. So I would say our connection is much more of peers, friends, and inspirations, I guess. For me, she's an inspiration as well. So I think it's that, and it's also like driving the Indian cultural mindscape together. I think it's that feeling which we really resonated with when we first met for the first few times, etc. And it's, I think, that excitement when you meet somebody else who's also hyper, who also wants to do a lot, who also is like, who has a lot of knowledge, and is actually, you know, what is the biggest resonance with both of us is the level of curiosity in life. I think it's the level of curiosity. It's when people are genuinely curious. And that curiosity, when I see it in Panya's eyes, for that particular couture garment of that particular collection, of that Jean-Paul Gaultier's collection, this thing, and that shoulder detail in that, and both of us being excited about that, is where the passion is. And I think it's the passion that we resonate with in each other. And so I think it was an obvious thing. And Panya's pop-up shop was has been the first of its kind. Panya is a pioneer in many ways, and I think that was very exciting. And I think we all learned, not just Panya and her team, but I think the entire fashion industry at large learned how, or at least got comfortable with how to sell online, and learned a lot of, gained a lot of knowledge from there. And there's a lot of learnings, because I think it's, the early bird advantage is there, as well as the early bird has to go through that time of learning as well. So I think that that's what it is. And coming to that, we just launched our own online selling platform, GauravGuptaStudio.com, in early September. And it was fantastic. It was, I think today there is today there is no choice but to be there online. And it's not just a choice, it's also about convenience. Even if I want to shop anything, I would literally go on that brand's Instagram or their website and see what is available, select what I want to select, and then if I want to go to the store, then go to the store and try something out, or just order it online. So it's, it's the need of the hour situation. It's the most obvious thing to do. But we've spent thousands of hours to curate that couture experience and a great UI experience on that 5-inch screen that you're talking about. We really wanted to curate a couture experience, which is what my customers are feeling in my stores, so that they're feeling it even if they're sitting in New York or Paris and London or Middle East or wherever they are. And they are literally doing that, and they're able to seamlessly do it. I think and every brand is learning their own ways of developing things online. What we are doing is we are giving a personalized stylist 24/7 on our website, where somebody can actually do a video chat, somebody can actually understand how to take those technical measurements for our couture garments, etc., and consult with my stylist, etc., as well. So there is a whole process differently defining, and online space is ever evolving right now.
What about you, Pranaya? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Gaurav. I think him and our connection is very personal. I think we respect each other in terms of the creative minds we have. We respect each other's thought processes. We have really exciting conversations. Even as a client, when I go to his store to just
oh my god, it's so exciting when she comes over.
Fun. Even if I'm going to buy something, I very rarely ever just pick up something off the rack. I like to sit and talk to him and tell him that, okay, what if we mix this with this, and what if I do this? And it's just this like it's just this connection we have as two creative, excited people. Exactly how he said, And I think I really do have to commend and thank Gaurav, because he was one of my first designers that I started Purnia's pop-up shop with. I started with very few people, because people didn't understand the concept. And a lot of designers didn't get it, because it was a new concept. So I don't blame them. But I think Gaurav had faith in me, and he had faith that I would be doing something good, and I would produce a good product, and I would represent his brand well. And I think he had faith in me, and he was one of the first designers to actually support me. So I'm very grateful and thankful, and I think we've had that connection ever since. As far as the phone goes, I'm really pretty much an addict, and I shouldn't be proud of it because my husband complains so much, but I'm addicted to my phone and social media. And so if anybody should know how to promote something on a phone or make a good website, it should be me, because I'm on it 24/7. I check everybody's product on my phone. If I have to shop, I shop on the phone. Right now I'm glued to the US election on my phone. So I'm just addicted to my phone. Everything I do through my phone. So when I'm creating a website, or if I want to sell something, I always think to myself that how would I like to see it? I'm a huge consumer of everything, right? Luxury, even food. I'm obsessed with food. I think to myself that how would I like to buy it? How would I like to see it? And I think that, okay, if I would like this service, or if I would enjoy this advantage, then maybe I should do it for my clients, And so that's how I look at it, And honestly, I think the best way to sell something on a certain medium is to understand the medium really well. So like it's really funny. So now, like Reels, Instagram Reels is very new, right? And I feel like such a fossil, because I'm like, wait, I can't figure out Reels. How do I use Reels? So like I had to call my friend is a stylist. Her assistant is this like 20-year-old girl. I'm like, can you come and teach me Reels?
Exactly. Oh my God. I want a 20-year-old or a 16-year-old around me all the time, just teaching me everything.
I was like, I need to know how to use it, because
exactly.
I think it's this need to always be updated with what is going on. I was just getting really into TikTok, and then they banned TikTok. So I was like, fine. So I think you have to just update yourself and really be on it, because, honestly, I feel like once you get really acquainted with one like platform that's doing really well, something else develops. So you have to have this agility to keep moving on and keep learning further when it comes to technology and luxury and e-commerce and shopping.
So after listening to you, I think I'll have to talk to Toran, because what has happened is today there are millions of consumers like you who spend most of the time on their
Phone.
smartphones. So that is the challenge which is faced by marketeers all over the world, and Forever Mark is one such company. And it has been very proactive. It has taken a lot of initiatives to engage the millennial audience and do business with them. So over to you, Toran. What do you have to say on this?
So what Pernia and Gaurav said about being a fossil, actually even I'm that kind, and I really can't figure, and sometimes I just think social media takes up too much of my time. So it's even worse for me to be able to. But overall, this is a way of life. The way people or the youngsters today, and 70% of India is going to be less than 35. So the way they interact with technology, the way they interact with all things around is very different than how we were when we were at that age. So even if we are talking about the millennials, the way we design stuff or campaigns around them, it's very different. For example, there is a very typical kind of jewelry setting in the south of India called close setting. Now it's a staple which every South Indian lady will buy. Now youngsters also, they really want to buy it, but just now the design that they see is quite irrelevant for their lifestyle, their needs, their kind of attitude. So we've actually created a collection where we've contemporized the traditional setting. And the tagline that we've given is a little traditional, a little modern, just like you. Because we've realized that people women at that age, although they are global citizens and they have access to everything across
There's no electricity suddenly in my house. Wait, it doesn't matter. Let's go on.
Yeah, please continue, Toran. Yeah.
As I was saying, there's that little mobile phone. They get to see everything that is available across the globe. So, but they really want to be rooted. They still want to be rooted in their traditions, in their culture. And so the thing is that it's how you contemporize and fit into their lifestyle is what we actually try to do. Another example actually was we did this enormous research. We roll it out every 5 years, which is the Diamond Acquisition Study. And this is a national research where we talked to about 40,000 women across the country. And what we realized is the most purchased diamond product was the nose ring after rings. And we were like, if that's the case, the nose rings are so outdated. We actually went back to our designers and asked them to create something which was contemporary about the nose ring. And we came up with this collection called Capricci, which really had a lot of color in it, had a bracelet, had a charm bracelet, and had a pair of earrings. So you could actually mix and match, give versatility to the whole collection, jewelry package that we created for this nose pin. And that made a lot of difference. It flew off the shelves. So it really is how you integrate into the lifestyle and the behavior of the young consumer just now to be able to actually move out. In fact, I will also, and color plays a really important part in this because color is far more young, far more youthful than regular jewelry pieces. I'd like to show you all a video just now of a collection that one of our jewelry partners has made, Rose in Bombay. But have a look at this video and see the fun that we've tried to bring into the collection. So thank you. So as you see, there is a lot of versatility that we bring into to the jewelry piece to make it relevant to the younger consumer.
Can I just add something there?
Yes,
That
please.
was really cool. And I think, and I know your nose rings that you're talking about, they're very cool. I've seen them. I've seen I've seen friends and I've seen like makeup artists and different people wearing them. And I think today, in today's time, and I will include myself in it, like a lot of girls want things that can be worn more than one way. Like, I don't want to just buy something and get stuck with it that I have to only wear it like this. You know, the moment I can wear it like this also and like this also, it makes me want to buy it that much more. And this is really important with jewelry, but also with clothing. Like with clothing, it's so nice to buy pieces that, okay, I can style it like this, and I can wear it 5 different ways. That makes me want to buy it. Like, for example, I bought a really beautiful blouse and a short blouse, beaded blouse, and a sari from Gaurav. And I bought it because I thought to myself, I'm going to wear this with trousers, this top, and I'm going to wear this as a sari, and I'm going to do this with it. So the moment any piece becomes versatile, automatically, I can tell you, today's girls will automatically want to be like, okay, then let me give this a try, and let me check it out, let me maybe buy it, you know, because we want value for money. A lot of the girls who are buying, we earn ourselves, we pay for our own luxury, and we want value for our money. You know, we want to wear it 5 ways.
Absolutely.
So Toranj, you have somebody who may buy forever jewelry. Awesome. So now what we do is, there is a lady by the name of Shreya Agarwal, and she also is a blogger, and she has done MBA in luxury. So I think we will unmute her, and she wants to ask a question directly to Parni. Shreya. Can you turn her video on, Jain bhai?
Hello. Hi, Purnia.
Hi.
Good evening to all the panelist members. It's been such an interesting conversation that's going on, and especially to you, Purnia, you've been a great inspiration for me as compared to an entrepreneur as well as the personal brand that you carry. So today, my question to you is, since you've launched 2 successful portals, e-commerce portals, how important do you feel is your personal brand also being part of it and making it more successful? And in West, we see a lot of designers, you know, having this entire charm of having a personal brand associated with their business. And we don't see that so much in the East. But how do you think your personal brand has added up to the business and the entire concept of Purnia Qureshi, you know, being there for the e-commerce platforms?
You know, thank you, Shreya, for saying all those nice things. You know, honestly, my personal brand has never been a priority. It has never even been on my agenda for what I want to do as a part of my career. It is something which has, I think, very organically developed. I almost feel uncomfortable even saying that I have a personal brand, because I don't see myself like that. And I don't actually take myself so seriously. I mean, anybody who knows me very closely knows that I'm a big fat fool, and I'm, you know, I like to have fun, and I can be really, like, you know, silly, and I don't want to take myself seriously ever. And I don't want the responsibility almost of being a personal brand. You know, I don't want that responsibility, because I'm human and I make mistakes and I do stupid things. Like, in the beginning at Pop-Up Shop, I mean, I guess we were really young, and we used to make so many stupid videos for social media. I look at them and I cringe. I'm like, I was such a fool. But, you know, I'm like, okay, you know, it's no problem. It's okay. Like, at that time, it was really fun, and I did it, and I moved on, you know? So I don't want to ever carry this burden of being a brand. You know, it is something which is just kind of, I guess, developed organically on its own. And I think it's more that other people have defined me in certain ways, that she's like this and she's like that, because of the work I've done, or because of maybe the way they've seen me on social media. But it's not always exactly precise to what I really am in reality, you know? So I don't really take that seriously. I think the most important thing is to be authentic to my work. And I focus on my work, you know. So whether it was Pop-Up Shop, now it's Go to Organics, I dance, or whatever I'm doing, even when I was doing the film, like whatever I do with a lot of passion and authenticity. And if that comes out, And the thing is,
Exactly.
I can't help but have my personality come out in everything, because I'm an extrovert. I love to talk. I'm really out there. So I think my personality just automatically comes through in everything that I do. And I take my work very personally. And I put a lot of myself in my work. So my personality comes through everywhere. And as far as social media is concerned, like I never tried or attempted to be an influencer. But if like friends are doing certain things, I always want to help them and promote them and talk about them. And now if brands are giving me money to just hold up or something and say something, and I in some way resonate with the brand, or I do like the brand, I'm happy to do it. Why not? Because it's extra cash and it's not taking anything away from me as such. This is just the truth. So it's not like I'm trying to build an influencer. In fact, I charge so much because I'm like, I don't want to do this as a full-time.
I have the same
That's a
problem.
reverse
I
psychology.
don't end up getting so many projects because I do the same thing.
And brands
I'm like,
are so upset. They're like, so and so's charging this much, and I'm like, I don't care. This is not my full-time job. So if you would like to collaborate with me, and if I take time out from my day to shoot a video for you, then you pay me a certain price. Otherwise, this is not my full-time job. I'm not trying to be an influencer or a brand personality or something. If it happens on the side organically, great. But my work is still my main focus. And I think so I think most things in my life have just kind of all happened quite organically, while I was just focusing on my work.
Yeah, I think that's I think the most important thing that I feel is the authenticity of just being you yourself.
Yeah.
And that is something that you connect more with anything else. It's like I've connected to you with the dance that you do most often, because I love dancing. And that's one thing that I told Anilji also, that I'm so excited because I've seen her as a dancer as well as a designer as well as an entrepreneur. And I think that comes out more beautifully as compared to the entire concept of social media and the
Thank
presence.
you,
being
Shreya. We are
online.
running out of time. Sorry to
Thank you,
interrupt
Shreya.
you.
Thank you.
But after listening to Gaurav and Parnia about the pricing, I have been following this stock market now that I have a lot of time. So there is a terminology in the stock market. There are certain stocks which have a BAAP factor, BAAP, buy at any price. I think both Parnia and Gaurav have that BAAP factor. So now, since we are running short of time, I will take one last question. It is addressed to Gaurav. So I'll read it out. We will not go live because we are really running out of time. So there is a question from Anika Chaudhary, and it is for Gaurav, as I already said. Tell us about inclusivity and the wave of social change as portrayed in the film Name is Love.
Thank you, Anika, for this question. The thing is, when I was asked to do the first ever digital show, or the Couture Week of India, and we were doing the opening show there, I was like, okay, how, it's also this lockdown literally has changed a lot of the way we think about work, or the way we express ourselves right now as artists or as creative people as well. And I think what it did to me was that I wanted to, for me, it was like, yes, I am a couture brand today. People know what I do. They consume me for receptions, for weddings, for engagements, for all kinds of different occasions. Our menswear is successful. Our jewelry is really beautiful. We have all the pieces in the right place. What do I want to do next? And I think it's very important for a brand when it starts becoming a part of a culture. For it's very important for it to be responsible to have a socio-political dialogue. And I think that's where fashion is, fashion, art, culture, all of these things overlap in every way. So I think when we did that, I didn't actually start with the thought process of that I want an inclusive campaign, because inclusivity is very trending right now, and that's what a lot of people are doing, and this and that and the other. It really started with a very pure thought process of love and hope, because of this times of despair, how everybody has been feeling personally. I've been calling it a time of Samudra Manthan, actually, which is going on personally, economically, socio-culturally, in every way. So I wanted to, we started And then when I said, okay, I want to convey love and I want to celebrate love. When we started looking at love, we were like, okay, fine. There is, everybody, all designers, and it's really beautiful. They do like these beautiful wedding campaigns. And I didn't want to do another wedding campaign because it's like, I'm just bored of them, in the sense of, and you can do a wedding campaign and, you can do either a very exciting theme wedding campaign, etc., etc. And that's, so I just wanted to convey love. When he started with the idea of love, then I discovered such beautiful stories of authentic love between, let's say, a lesbian couple living in Gurgaon. And I was like, this is a story to tell, because when I was growing up as a bisexual or a gay person in India, it was a very different time. Today, I see this young generation, which is very, very confident of being who they are, even if they're not into fashion or art or music, etc., or creative industries. One is a banker, one is doing marketing for somebody, and they're living in with their parents. I was very pleasantly surprised with this new, the cultural shift that has actually happened and has not been talked about enough in this country. There is a cultural shift which has happened. I see the cultural shift in my parents today, from how they think now, versus how they used to think, even with me 10 years back or 5 years back. So I think that cultural shift was very important to talk about. And that's where that inclusivity came in. And, that the transgender, the trans male, he's 18 years old and is going to University of Delhi and is super cool and super confident. I was a bit intimidated by him. I was like, how cool is this new crop of people? And there's so many for them, it's like these gender notions and things like that it's not even a conversation anymore. It's almost like, okay, they assume that everything is cool around it. I love that attitude in them. And I think that I wanted it to be conveyed to the larger public, and for it to be more vernacular as a communication in the country. That's why we did follow it up with IGTV Lives, where almost like, I was so overwhelmed with the emotional experience where Anjali Lama, the transgender supermodel of the country, is telling me that जब मैं मरूंगी मैं आपको जरूर याद करूंगी, मैं किसी और को याद करूं ना करूं. So it was a very emotional journey for me to do this movie called Name is Love. And it was really celebrating self-love, love of all kind of bodies, shapes and sizes, all kinds of colors, skin tones, all kind of. We took models from Assam, from Jharkhand, from Thane, from all over the country, who are actually walking shows in Paris right now. So I really wanted to portray, discover and then celebrate this new cultural movement in India.
I think fantastic. Your thought process is something which will inspire all of us. Inclusivity is something which everybody talks because it is in vogue today. But there are very few people who are implementing it, and you are one of them. So now it is time for me to express gratitude. I know how busy you are, all the panelists, and also the patrons, the audience. Today is Saturday evening. Diwali is around the corner. There are so many other options, but you chose to be with us. And that is very important. So I'll leave you with just one thought, a point to ponder. We have discussed many points: creativity, craftsmanship, technology, inclusivity, sustainability. Sustainability is such a topic that you can discuss for hours together. According to me, during this COVID, one thought which has dawned on everybody is the belief in less is more. You open your cupboard, you have 100 shirts. Do you really need 100 shirts? In Delhi, people own 15 cars. Do you really need 15 cars? You are increasing your footprint. But business people may not like it. Less is more, because you have to sell more, and all businesses run on greed. But if I have read some of the books, one of them being a book by Dana Thomas, Fashionopolis. Fashion industry is the biggest polluter across the globe. And there are alternatives being worked out, one of them being organic cotton and all those. Now, brands like Zara, fast fashion is the biggest culprit. And even Zara today is talking about biodegradable clothing. So if we want to make the world a better place to live in. Everybody needs to adopt the motto, less is more, whether we like it or not. With these words, good evening. Diwali is round the corner. So wish you a very happy Diwali, and we will meet, inshallah, again in December. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having
you.
us. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much.
Happy
Fania.
Diwali.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank
you
you,
guys.
Devashish.
It was very nice
Thank you.
talking to all of
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yes,
Very
thank
nice
you.
of you.
Likewise.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Taranj.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Devashish. Take care. Bye.